This is Jordan Poyer, safety for the Buffalo Bills, and you are now listening to Cover One Buffalo Podcast. Let's go.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo Podcast. You are joining your normal partners in crime, Greg Thompson and Aaron Quinn. Aaron, how are we doing?
I am doing a lot better than I was the last time we talked. I'm finally over that loss and on to the Redskins, man.
Yeah, I saw a couple of things online people shared about kind of the process you go through and the steps of, acceptance and anger and denial and all the different pieces. I think I'm finally at acceptance. I think I finally got there and am ready to move on. And to help us do that tonight, we have our friend from the Athletic DC, Mark Bullock. Mark, how are we doing?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Not too bad. I think we're very much ready for this game. We took a thumping on Sunday and are ready to move on to anything that's not the Eagles. So you're a welcome addition.
Well, it'll always be nice to if you need a bounce back game, it's good to play the Washington team to bounce back when you need it.
No, we'll get to that part. But for anyone who's just joining for the first time, Mark is the primary writer for the Athletic DC, Mark Bullock NFL. Follow him on Twitter there. Mark, what's some work you have coming up that people can look for?
I just, today of the recording, we put out a piece looking at things that the Redskins could do to help Haskins. He's struggling at the moment with pre-snap process of spitting out the long wordy play calls and getting everyone lined up properly, and that's kind of given him a bit of a clustered mind at the line of scrimmage, so it's hurting him once the ball is actually snapped. So I looked at how Jared Goff in his rookie year had a similar issue, and Sean McVay came in and really simplified the offense and cut it down and allowed him to focus on learning the concepts and not having to worry about all the formations and personnel groupings and motions and all that kind of stuff. So that was something that just went out today that I wrote recently.
Actually, I'm going to put you on the spot. We didn't prepare for this, but Eric had mentioned it, and now that you mentioned it, you opened it up for me. Can you give me an example of one of those wordy, crazy play calls?
Yeah, I could try. The most basic one I could give you, a nice wordy one I could give you would be gun trips right tight, pass 19 wonder, X strike, can it with 18 wonder. Was it 18 wonder I gave it? Yeah, something like that. I think that's probably not too bad. It's a play action pass with you can it for the run that you would fake if the pass doesn't look on.
I can't imagine why Haskins is struggling with that.
I mean, it's something that I debate with people on Twitter all the time. People hate the long wordy play calls. I personally like them. Part of me thinks, it's just cool because I understand it, a fair bit of it. But it's also that I understand that it allows coordinators to be more specific with their calls, rather than, if you're going no huddle and you're just going with one word play calls, there's only so much variation you can do in that. Whereas if the coordinator wants to go back to the same look but adjust one route to be, rather than a stick, to be a stick nod, you then have to tag that receiver with a stick nod. And so that then adjusts the play call, and maybe he wants the formation to be slightly different, but the same concept. So it's a whole language that you do have to learn. It does take time to learn, but it's worthwhile learning, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, it's an interesting balance, and we talk about this leading up to the draft and some of the younger quarterback candidates, because you don't teach that kind of thing at the college level, right? So like a lot of these quarterbacks are coming in and coordinators keeping it super specific. So when you have a young quarterback coming into a system like that learning curve is probably greater than a lot of other young quarterbacks. And I don't think fans always have the grasp of what is being installed in the rooms, the language of the offense. I know, like, you'll hear about it in press conferences, right? Like, I played in an offense similar. The language is just a little different, but that language actually means quite a bit. And if you confuse that language in any way, that's where you get those plays where, PFF will poorly rate a quarterback, but it could be the new wide receiver or somebody didn't pick up the language of the play and there was a miscommunication or something. So there's a lot of it that goes into it. And I agree with you, in the right situation with, say, an Alex Smith, a guy who's been in the league a long time, can pick that kind of thing up quickly. fantastic, do it. But then when you have a young guy, I think sometimes it creates more problems than it's worth. So it's an interesting debate. And I'd love to be in on some of those debates sometime where fans are arguing what is the best path.
Yeah, for sure. And like, as you say, like every little detail when you have the kind of language is important. And it can be as simple as when I was going through that play call a minute ago, I wasn't sure whether I said 18 or 19. And that might not seem like the biggest deal, but that sends the direction of the run one way or the other. You know, the even number is sending it to the right, the odd number is sending it to the left. And if you think you've called 18 and you've actually called 19 in the huddle, then the quarterback's going to, you know, take off trying to hand off to the right, and the rest of the team's going to the left, and suddenly it's all screwed up. So the tiniest little details matter. And you're probably right in that a lot of younger quarterbacks coming into the league aren't prepared for learning that whole language. So that you could kind of cut it down a little bit. But I think they always had the intention of sitting Haskins this year, and that's why they tried to throw as much as they could at him to get him acclimated to it quicker, so that in a year's time when he's ready to take over, they don't have to cut down their playbook still for it.
Well, it's interesting. You talk about kind of that plan going into the year. Tell us a little bit about where this season is right now. Obviously, it hasn't gone incredibly well for Washington. Where is it versus what expectations were? Were there fans and part of the fan base that expected? I know there were some discussions of a good defense and some expectations that maybe Keenum could kind of band-aid things along for a bit. Not a ton of weapons on the offense once you saw Geis start out on the IR. Is this something where it's close to what was expected, or has this been a little bit deflating from what people thought?
I think the fans kind of went into the season expecting it not to be great, but the team certainly expected to be a lot better than they were. And Bruce Allen, the team president or GM, effectively, the guy that's basically running the show, he is quite famously quoted in the offseason as saying, "We're close." And we're very close to being a playoff team, and they are not very close to being a playoff team. So it's probably like a little bit disappointing. Obviously, anytime you fire a coach a few games into a season, it's not going well, and nobody expected that to happen probably quite as early as it did. I think most people probably expected it to be Gruden's last year, but not necessarily after a few weeks. So. The thought going into the season was that they would ride their defense, that they added Landon Collins, he would improve the back end. Then they drafted Montez Sweat. They thought that would improve the pass rush. They've got a really strong defensive line with Jonathan Allen, Jerome Payne, and Matt Ioannidis up front. So they thought that defense was going to be kind of the strength of the team. And then the likes of Geis and Adrian Peterson in the run game would hopefully carry the offense, and that just hasn't turned out to be the case. So they had some expectations going into the year. They have not met any of them.
Now, obviously, you guys had a bit of a wrench thrown in the year with Gruden just not, the team kind of seemed to be slipping away. The video comes out of him doing things in downtown DC. I think that maybe that was the straw that broke the camel's back. There was a couple reports that the team just kind of wasn't rallying around him as a leader in that organization. They make the move. They bring Callahan, who I respect a ton as a coach. I know Eric Turner respects a ton as one of the greatest offensive line coaches probably ever in football. He's had a shot at being a head coach before in another dysfunctional organization. From what I've seen, I watched a few games. I know we talked about it a little off air with my favorite guy in the world, Terry McLaurin, that Gruden was scheming him open a little better. And I do think Gruden is a really intelligent coach and probably a better game plan oriented coach. But what I see, at least on film, from this Redskins team from when Gruden was coaching to now is more effort. And guys kind of playing together. And you still don't have necessarily the best team in the league, but I think the effort has stepped up. And I think that that is just a sign of the new coach coming in. But with the new coach coming in, we talked about the offense and the language and things like that. What are the challenges for this team to have Gruden, his way of doing things, his install of the offense, and then you have this other coach? I'm assuming he's still running the same offense, but with his fingerprints on it and the way he would call it instead. What kind of challenge goes into it for the coach, it not being really his offense, and also the players taking an offense and kind of doing a little bit of something different with it?
Yeah, well, Callahan made it very, very clear when he in his introductory presser that he was going to establish the run. And, the Twitter debates about establishing the run and all of that. But he basically put a middle finger up at analytics Twitter and said the most important thing to him were rushing attempts and passing completion percentage. I mean, to be fair to him, he's stuck to his word, and he has been handing the ball off to Adrian Peterson and completing passes at a better rate. But I mean, it's not producing necessarily a better football team, in my opinion. Maybe they're a little bit more consistent, and the game plans maybe have a little bit better buy-in, possibly. I don't know. I always felt Gruden was one of the better schemers in the league in terms of offensive minds. I said when we were talking before about McLaurin, Gruden, in my opinion, he's one of the best in the league at scheming up players open deep. And guys like McLaurin, when we had Deshaun Jackson in Washington, he was getting open deep multiple times a game every week, and it was infuriating watching Kirk Cousins never pull the trigger. So, like, there is kind of the main difference is the philosophical standpoint of how they see the game, and Gruden wants to be aggressive and attack down the field, whereas Callahan is very much old school. We're going to run the ball, we're going to establish the run, and then we'll go from there. And so that is the main difference. It's not the best to watch at the moment, and the players are probably buying in a little bit more. The offensive linemen always love to run the ball. Adrian Peterson, he was kind of finding themselves on the fringe because they wanted to go with Geis, because Geis is more of a threat as a pass catcher and doesn't give kind of a tendency tip to, when Adrian Peterson was in the game, when he came out, Chris Thompson would come in, it would be obvious they were going to pass, whereas with Geis in the game, they could run or pass. So they liked that rather than Adrian Peterson, and Peterson kind of fell out with Gruden. And so the offensive line and Peterson have bought in heavily, and that has been basically the foundation of the Callahan offense so far.
Yeah, I mean, we'd love to have a running back as young as Adrian Peterson with someone like Frank Gore. It's someone who's only 34 seems nice.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, let's get into a little bit more of the offense and what we're expecting to see here. Obviously, up until this past weekend, the defense has been the strength for Buffalo, and being able to hold opponents, keep them disciplined. You have to go on long, extended drives. We hadn't given up a lot of big plays at all. With this Redskins team, what do you think they're going to try to do? Do you think, obviously, it seems pretty obvious, the blueprint the last couple of weeks, Miami and Philadelphia really just trying to pound the rock, and it seems like it's kind of a perfect marriage with what Callahan's trying to do. Do you think it's that simple and that we're going to see just a real dedication to trying to run the ball against Buffalo?
Yeah, for sure. Callahan is kind of a straight shooter in that regard. He hasn't kind of tried to tiptoe around like what they want to do and try to disguise it. No, he wants to run the ball, and they are going to hand the ball off. And Adrian Peterson, assuming he's healthy, he is going to get 20, 25 touches in the game, if not more. And they're going to look to run the ball. And if it's not working in the first quarter, they're going to run it again in the second. If it's not working then, they're going to run it again in the third. So that's what they're going to look to do. Kevin O'Connell, if he has as much input as he can, will probably try to scheme up some shots off of some play action. But for the most part, they are going to look to pound the rock. And that is what Callahan has set this team out to be. And they're going to stick to it.
And from an X's and O's standpoint, obviously we've seen what Adrian Peterson has done throughout his career, and he still flashes at times. His yards per carry is down, but I think some of that is obviously the lack of use from Gruden. I think that's starting to catch up now that Callahan's using them a little bit more. X's and O's standpoint, how do you think run scheme-wise they plan on attacking the Bills? And have you watched the Bills this week and seen some of the problems in the leaky run game? How would you attack the Bills defense and the run game specifically? Because there's many ways to do it in the run game. And Eric kind of wrote some pieces this week about how the Bills are being attacked. And I'd like to get your kind of view as what you think Callahan's planning to do in the run game.
Yeah, well, the run game's always been, even when Gruden was the head coach, Callahan was basically the run game coordinator, and his run schemes have always been pretty diverse. He likes to sprinkle in a little bit of everything into the run scheme. Since he's taken over, and Kevin O'Connell has become the offensive coordinator and the play caller, they've narrowed it down a little bit. They haven't been quite so diverse in all the different things they can do. And part of that is that I think Kevin O'Connell kind of leans a little bit towards Jay Gruden in that they feel Adrian Peterson runs certain types of runs well. And that's your I formation, lead draws and your duo plays. They run duo all the time right now. And that's something that I'd be shocked if you didn't see it on Sunday. And so you're looking at your gap scheme runs inside and trying to hit Adrian Peterson up the middle. And if the defense overflows inside, he's going to try to bounce it and bounce one outside. And if he bounces one outside, he'll break it for 20 or 30 yards or maybe a little bit more. That is what they do primarily right now. And it's kind of been that way almost regardless of opposition because that's what they feel Adrian Peterson's best at. So that's what I would expect out of them is your downhill runs, your power, your counters, your ISOs, and your duo, a lot of duo.
I think it's interesting, and the timing is going to be interesting in how they go about this with what we just saw the last 2 weeks, and that I think there's a chance that the Redskins could have timed this really well to be able to take advantage of it. I'm hopeful, and I think a lot of Bills fans are hopeful, that the wake-up call that they got and getting punched in the mouth the way they did, I know that both Leslie Frazier and Sean McDermott talked about that they thought they identified some of the challenges in breaking down the film. They thought that they had the adjustments they needed to make. Obviously, that's easy to say. Curious to see how they execute on that. But I'm curious to see if they're able to make that a third game in a row that we see this kind of attack, or if they're able to right the ship. And really, that's probably going to be the key to whether they're able to make this game more competitive than what Washington's been in the past. What do you think as far as switching over here on the defensive side of the ball? We talked earlier about Montez Sweat and a guy that I was a big fan of and hasn't done quite as well as Aaron's draft crush, Terry McLaurin. On the defensive side of the ball, where do you think the Bills are going to try to attack the Redskins?
Well, right now, the issues for the Redskins are in the secondary. They have been banged up at corner all year. And Josh Norman has been kind of the headline guy. Everyone likes to pick on him because he has the big contract, but he hasn't struggled as much as most people would like to make out. But he hasn't been anywhere near what the money would suggest he should be. He hasn't been creating the turnovers, and he has been a little bit of a liability in man coverage. He certainly has been getting run by. The other week, Stephon Diggs just ran by him, but Diggs runs by a lot of people. So they could certainly look to attack deep and try to get Norman on double moves. He's been biting on those. They've been out without free safety Monte Nicholson. His replacement is Troy Apke. He's someone that was drafted purely on his speed. He was one of those 4.2, 4.3 kind of guys at the combine, and he was just an athlete that they kind of want to play special teams, but he's being forced into starting roles with Monte Nicholson out. Quinton Dunbar has been playing well on the other side, but they've had issues in the slot as well. Fabian Moreau has been really struggling this year in the slot. So you have Norman and Moreau, Fabian Moreau that you can target in the passing game. And in the run game, they've been generally pretty solid. That front, the defensive front with Ionitis Allen and Daron Payne is pretty solid and pretty tough to run on. And the Redskins have done a pretty good job clogging the running lanes lately after a pretty poor start. So if I was the Bills, or if I was any team looking to take on the Redskins, I would be passing the ball, passing a lot, targeting slot receivers, and trying to flood Norman's side of the field and see if you can match him up with a speedster and burn him deep.
And on that, we know, Josh Norman has the confidence level where he feels like he should shadow guys, and he really hasn't been shadowing all that much. Do you think this would be a week where the Bills really only have two receivers that are getting any type of production in John Smoke Brown and Cole Beasley? Duke Williams came on for 1 week, hasn't really gotten any production. Could you see a scenario where they try to shadow John Brown and just keep Norman on him? Or do you think that because of his speed and because of the problems Norman's had, they don't really care to try to get that matchup in their favor and just kind of let Brown go where he wants on the field?
Yeah, it's not a matchup that they like. They don't want Norman on speed guys. They've tended to put Quentin Dunbar. They've moved him around to kind of whoever they feel is the biggest receiving threat. Against the 49ers, they had Dunbar on George Kittle, for example. So they've matched him up on tight ends a couple of times. He's got that extra size, so he's someone that can play physical with those bigger guys, but he's athletic enough to run with the quicker guys. So he's kind of the guy that will match up with speedsters. If they want to follow a guy, it will be Dunbar that will probably follow them rather than Norman. Norman will probably, for the most part, stick to his side. So you could probably, if you're looking to burn him, you could probably get him. He'll stick at that left corner spot, so you can send your speedster over to that side and look to get him with whatever kind of double move, or if you get him up and pressing at the line, just run by him with a go or what have you. So that would be how I imagine the Redskins would probably rather not have that matchup, but they haven't been someone that have had Norman follow guys around very much.
Another question with that kind of in the defense and matchup related, the games I watched, I haven't seen yet you guys face a quarterback that has the ability to get out of the pocket like Josh Allen has done in the past. He hasn't done it as much this year. Obviously, he took that big hit in New England. I think he's dialed it back quite a bit since then. He leaked out a few times against the Eagles, but they kept a spy on him for a majority of the game, and he didn't really get to do anything. How has the Redskins defense done in the past with dual threat type quarterbacks like that? And do you expect them to keep a spy and try to keep Josh Allen in the pocket or change the way they rush lanes just because of his ability to get out of the pocket and make those plays? Yeah,
they've been terrible with quarterbacks that can extend plays, quite frankly. They in the past, they have done a lot of spying. They used to play a lot of cover 3, but then they'd only rush 3 and they dropped Preston Smith into kind of a quarterback spy. Because he was athletic enough to do it. So that was something they used to do. Obviously, Preston Smith's not there anymore. They haven't done that quite so much this year. As you say, they haven't necessarily had to. I don't know whether they would use Montez Sweat in a similar fashion, and they certainly wouldn't use Ryan Kerrigan because Kerrigan's not that kind of athlete. So they like their inside linebackers. They have a lot more of an athletic inside linebacker group this year with Cole Holcomb, the rookie, and Sean Dion Hamilton in his second year out of Alabama. So they like those guys they're athletic enough to drop into coverage and get up and chase down quarterbacks, but they've done really badly with quarterbacks being able to extend the play and scramble, and that is definitely an area of concern, especially with someone like Josh Allen. They have in the past tried to be more conservative with their pass rush and stick to their rush lanes to try to keep the quarterback in the pocket, but they have a tendency to fall out of their rush lanes, or if they stick to their rush lanes, not get much push at all, and then the quarterback can stand there all day and pick the defense apart. So they've been a little bit more aggressive of late of trying to dial up a few more blitzes, and it'll be interesting to see if they stay with that route. I think they might, but they've either been kind of going 5-man rushes with an inside linebacker and a peel blitz with an edge guy peeling off to pick up the running back out of the backfield, or they've been trying to muddy the coverage with rushing just the 3 defensive linemen we talked about, Allen, Ioannidis, and Payne, and dropping 8 into coverage and playing 2 banks of 4 zones effectively. So I expect with a mobile quarterback, they'll probably try to muddy the coverage a little bit more with as much zone coverage that can rally to the ball.
One kind of overarching question now, getting out of the details of the game specifically. I know a lot of the fans have asked, and going into this, what is the tenor around the organization with the challenge and the situation with Trent Williams? Is that it was a name that was bandied about, and obviously with Buffalo spending so much capital in trying to revamp their offensive line, there was some interest in wanting to pursue someone like that. What are you hearing locally there or seeing with the organization? Do you think that there's a chance that we see him in a Washington uniform again?
I would lean towards a no on that. He has been essentially, the situation is that last year he went to the team staff, the team medical staff, about a growth on his head, and they said to wait until the off season to check it. And then he went and got a second opinion in the off season, and they checked it, and it turned out it was benign and fine, but they did say that was quite risky, and it could have been a cancerous tumor, and it could have been something seriously detrimental to his health, obviously. So he then completely lost trust in the medical staff, which I think anyone in the same situation probably would. And so he made that clear to the Redskins that he was not going to come back and play for them. And he stuck to his word. And the Redskins and Bruce Allen and Dan Snyder in particular are guys that are very stubborn, very petty, and they don't like to lose that kind of battle. They don't like players like standing out and standing up to them. So they have resisted any kind of trade talk for the whole off-season, well into the season. And then at the deadline, they finally were open to it, but nobody was willing to pay their price. So he reported to practice today. He didn't actually practice because he failed his physical, going for citing a helmet that didn't fit comfortably, and with the growth that had been removed from his head, causing that to still be painful when he put a helmet on. So he didn't practice. He didn't pass his physical. So he won't play this game. And I would be surprised if he did anything but try to, at the very least, pretend to be injured to not have to play for the rest of the year, but still have it count as an occurred season and not have his contract roll over an extra year. But you never say never. And, in the off season, if Bruce Allen gets fired and there's a complete regime change, he could come back. But certainly for this season and under this regime, I don't see Trent Williams coming back.
Do you think I know I have a couple friends that are Redskins fans, and they're so totally sick of Schneider, and they're already sick of Allen. Do you think that this Trent Williams thing is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back, or is it such a stubborn front office and philosophy of, kind of digging your heels in, that Snyder doesn't really care that much and doesn't really care so much what the fans think and what's going on, and is happy with the direction in the youth that this team's doing, and going to give Allen a chance to hire another coach?
It's hard to tell. Dan Snyder's not going anywhere, and I think that's the biggest sort of
detriment.
That's causing the most apathy among Redskins fans, is that, he's not going anywhere. Realistically, he's not going anywhere. He's making money off the team, so he's going to be content with that in the long run. And so that just causes him not to care. He could potentially change it around and bring some more optimism if he did fire Bruce Allen. The biggest issue Snyder's had is that he doesn't trust guys very well. He struggles to let guys in and build a trust with them. And so there's only very few people that get to his inner circle. And the two people that he's trusted so far, Bruce Allen and before him, Vinny Serrato, have been terrible general managers. So they could always get lucky, and he could find the one guy that he trusts happens to be a great general manager and that turns around the ship. But until that happens, there's going to be I can't imagine he would allow Bruce Allen to hire another head coach with the record that Bruce Allen's had and the amount of bad press that every time Bruce Allen speaks, he comes up with a terrible quote. Like just recently, he was saying that there was a damn good culture in the building, and like at that time they were 0-6, and it's like, how the hell is there a damn good culture? You're 0-6. A few off seasons ago, they had just had another losing season, and he came up with the famous quote of, well, we're winning off the field, and stuff like our Harvest Festival celebration was good, and we're winning off the field. We just need to win on the field. It's like, it's absolute nonsense, and fans aren't buying it. So I think the Redskins certainly need to get rid of Allen to restore at least some sort of care about watching this team again. And then we'll see how it goes from that.
The incredible part is I think a lot of fans underestimate and can appreciate the challenge of maybe not an ideal owner and not that circumstance, and that, you know, having Snyder own the team for 20 years, you would assume he's older, but he's just now 54. And the fact that he bought the team that young, he might own this team for 20, 30 more years. And that wouldn't be abnormal. That's, 20 more years from now, he's 74. That's how old most other owners are already. And that's a deflating feeling as
very, very deflating. Like that's the thing that, as I said, that's the big issue, is that he's not going anywhere for a long time. And the only real hope is that, as I say, he finally manages to trust someone that's an actual good scouting general manager that understands how to build a team and is able to get Snyder's trust and be allowed to have the time to build a team and the resources and the overall say, and not have Snyder come in and go, well, I actually want this quarterback and I want this player on my team and this guy I didn't like, so we're not having him. He has to be able to stand back. And I think to a degree Snyder has stood back, or taken at least a step back from what he was when he was younger, but he still empowers guys like Bruce Allen that just don't run a football team very well. And that, combined with, as you say, his age, he's going to be there for a while, leads to just a lack of just general apathy that nobody cares anymore.
Well, so I get the sense from you that you aren't thinking that this is going to be a great game for the Redskins, but the Bills did play down to the Dolphins just 2 weeks ago, and they just got punched in the mouth by the Eagles. And I expected that game to be a lot closer, even though I think the Eagles were a better team on paper. So the Bills are kind of coming off back-to-back weeks of playing down from their really good start this year. And even in that good start, they played down to some teams and almost let some games get away. So I am really interested, though, to hear your prediction for this game, because I don't think it's going to be as sure of a win as maybe fans thought it was 3-4 weeks ago here in Buffalo. But I want to get your prediction as a Redskins reporter.
I ultimately think the Bills will win. I would be surprised if they didn't. The Redskins formula is kind of the old school formula. They run the ball, they dominate the clock, and if they can run the ball well, and Adrian Peterson rips off a couple of nice runs, and they get a lead early, then they can control the clock, and their defense can, bend but not break, hold the Bills to some field goals, maybe generate a turnover or two. Then you could be looking at a game that will be run close. But it's a team that has, over the past few years, found a way to lose, even in games that they're close and they should win or they could win. They find ways to lose, and I just don't see them having enough quality to overcome their consistent mistakes that they make.
We're gonna put you to it. What do you expect the score to be this week? What would you predict?
I don't know. The Redskins haven't been scoring many points, so I'll go with maybe 10 for them, and I'll go 21-10.
What's funny is that that's not far off of what Vegas is predicting.
Oh, really?
From some of the things I've read, they have this as the lowest over/under of any game all season. I think I read it as 36 points, and 36 is the lowest over/under they've put on any game all season. They have the Bills at 10.5, so they're predicting 24-10 or 23-13, somewhere in that ballpark is what they're predicting. So you're not far off of what Vegas is thinking as well.
Interesting. I didn't know that was the line they were going for, but that it seems about right to me. They haven't been scoring too many points. They've been better at moving the ball the past few weeks, and they've been better in the run game, but they still have too many errors to overcome for me to say that they can really put a challenge this week.
So one more time before we get you out of here, for any of the fans listening, appreciate Mark's insight here. Mark Bullock NFL, when you're looking on Twitter, writer for The Athletic DC. And one more time, Mark, anything that the fans can look forward to that you have coming out here in the future?
Tomorrow, day after recording this, there's a piece that should be out on Montez Sweat, looking at how he's doing in his rookie year, and sort of we're at the midway point through the year, so kind of getting a rough idea of where he's at and how he needs to develop going forward.
Excellent. We really appreciate your time tonight. Great insight on a team that, we don't get to see all that often. So it was great to have someone like yourself on to be able to talk through us. And at least for all of our sake, I wish us an entertaining game on Sunday.
Yeah, that if you could give me entertainment, I would be very, very happy. So thanks for having me on, guys. It was a lot of fun.
Hey, and take care of Terry McLaurin for me.
We will try. He is someone I have to tweet about every week just to keep myself sane.
Good.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Thanks,
we
man.
appreciate it.
Cheers, guys.
So Aaron, it's interesting talking to someone like Mark and being able to go through and, again, get some insight on a team that we only see once every 4 years. We're only welcoming them to Buffalo once every 8 years. I don't think he's wrong. This is a game that I'm not sad that this is the opponent that they get coming out of that rough game versus Philadelphia, and that
rough 2 games.
Yeah. Honestly, rough 2 games, and that I hope this can be a get right game. Is that what you think we're going to see here?
First of all, it was nice having him on because, you're a nice guy, but just talking to you is kind of a pain sometimes. So it was nice to have somebody else here to break us up a little bit. No, I do think you're right. In watching them, I think that it sets up well for this to be that type of game that gets you over the hump. I think it sets up well also as far as a test in what both Frazier and McDermott talked about this week in correcting that run game, because I don't think they're a super talented team, but I do think that they're going to test the Bills in the ways that the Bills have been getting beat the last 2 weeks. And so it'd be one thing if they went up against, say, Arizona Cardinals after getting beat up like that 2 weeks in a row, and they say, hey, we're going to fix the run game, and then they go up against a team that's passing a majority of the time at a spread set, and they say, hey, look, you know what? Well, we didn't get beat in the run. We didn't give up a lot of rushes. So I think that this is sets up very well in that sense, where if they really did fix it and we fixed the fundamentals and the technique and whatever else they had in that conversation, that Frazier felt strongly enough to say, he felt pretty confident, I think, in his press conference to say, hey, we addressed this. So there was some type of meeting, open dialogue meeting in that room between coaches and players to really hammer out what's going on in the run game. So I think it's a good test. And I think you're right that the team competition that they're going up against plays well as far as getting that confidence back to really ramp up, because the hardest stretch of the season is still yet to come when you got Baltimore coming up. And I know the Browns are having their own issues off the field too, but they still have a talented team. Dallas has slid recently, but they're still a talented team. So they've got to get a nice confidence boost here soon to really get this stretch going if they want to be that 11-win team.
No, I think you're spot on. And that these 4 games, there's, like you said, there is a rough patch coming, and there is going to be a difficult stretch in the schedule that, is not something that we're not in a position to look ahead. We're not in a position to get nervous all of a sudden that, hey, what are we going to do when it's Cowboys, Ravens, Steelers, Patriots, we're all 4 in a row, and that we need to focus on these 4. And the next 4 games that we go through, the Redskins, at the Browns, at the Dolphins, and home for the Broncos, they need 3 out of those 4. They need to get 3 out of those 4 games. They need to be 8-3 by the end of that stretch, and then ride into that last stretch and be already in a very good, stable position. And that starts with this week. That starts with a game at home against the 1-6 Redskins that they need to be able to just simply close this out and take care of it. And the area that I feel the most confident in is not having that threat that Carson Wentz presented, and that I do think they're going to be able to really confuse and throw a lot at Haskins, and that being able to really key in on Adrian Peterson and making Haskins beat you, and having someone like Trey White being able to match up with Terry McLaurin and not giving them that option to go over the top. And that I'm hopeful that really having that wake-up call can be what was needed, because the last 3 weeks, Adrian Peterson has gone for 118, 81, and 76. They've woken up a little bit since then, and that if you let him get going, he's very much like a Frank Gore, and that age is not going to belie what his performance ability is. But I think they're going to be able to keep that capped. I think they're going to be able to manage that and keep it within reason, and really be able to kind of get their minds right and right the ship here and earn the win.
Yeah, and I think, we look at the record, and this is a tough team to judge in the sense that they made this coaching change, and I have seen a difference in their play since making the coaching change. And they had that weird game against San Francisco. That was a really hard one to evaluate because the weather there was one of those throwback games to the 50s you see on NFL Network with just mud and everything there. So, I say it all the time. I know people say weather doesn't affect the game, but it clearly affected that game, because I think San Francisco probably should have beat them by 30, and it only ended up being a field goal contest there. So tough game to evaluate there. But I think people are fooling themselves if they don't think that the Redskins are watching the film of the last 2 weeks of the Buffalo Bills and licking their chops, that this is exactly the kind of game where they can come out and establish some stuff. Guys are still trying to put things on film. They're obviously not competing for the playoffs, but guys are trying to put some things together, trying to earn their spot on this roster next year, trying to prove who they are. And I think a lot of the guys, especially along the offensive line, a guy like Adrian Peterson, Callahan, is watching that film and saying, hey, this is the kind of team that we can really get something going against and maybe pick up a win and build something, get some people excited around here. So I think they're looking at the film of the Buffalo Bills and seeing that challenge and thinking that they can address that. So I hope that the Bills come ready to play, and that they don't take a while to get going like we saw against the Dolphins, and that they if they do get punched in the mouth a couple times, because I think it's pretty silly to think that we'll contain that run game the entire game, but that they don't let that snowball like we saw last week in the second half, and continue to drive down the field and continue to keep our offense off the field and establish those long drives and stuff like that. Because then I do start to get nervous that we've seen Bills teams in the past drop games. I know people said this isn't the same old Bills. Well, the only way they're not the same old Bills is if they keep a 5-2 record and make it a 6-2 record against the team that they really should be across the board on paper. They should come out and win this game. No questions asked. So this is going to be a pivotal test for their season, and really a defining test, because if you drop 2 in a row and you lose to the Redskins, I don't want to talk to anybody about the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great test of that same old Bills mentality, in that this is a game that they would let unravel, that they'd get in their own heads, that they'd come out and let the Redskins hang around and keep it close and feel like they're in the game. And honestly, that's not a lot different than what Washington just did to Minnesota, in that I don't think any Bills fan is going to say that our roster is better than the Vikings roster. They're 6-2. They're in a really good position. That game was, 3-3. 6-6, 16-9. They were in that game the entire time and within a score the whole time.
Keenum stays in that game. That might be a lot different result for them.
Yeah, very much so. I think that's very much in question. And again, I do think that Dwayne Haskins has a potential in the future, and it's not there yet. We don't know anything right now. I think that there was some limited reps for Keenum today, and that very similar to the feeling I had in the Miami game when it was Rosen versus Fitzpatrick, in that I do think that our defense, Leslie Frazier, they can throw a lot at a young quarterback and really put them in a difficult spot to be able to go, and that I don't know that it automatically means Haskins going to play. But if Keenum plays, I think that does change the dynamic a little bit and gives them a little bit more of a threat, getting a guy that probably can make those reads quicker, get the ball out of his hand, spread it around, let someone like McLaurin get loose or try to get some yak and try to break something there, versus if it's Haskins, I think they can confuse him. I think they'll get some turnovers, some sacks from him holding the ball too long, trying to make something happen. So I do think that also makes a difference. And in my mind, that's probably the difference of whether they win an ugly, close game or whether they maybe cover and are able to pull away a little bit if it's Haskins.
Yeah, and J.O. in the chat asks, can we run on them? And then he mentions Gordon needs 100 to top the Barry record. I think from what I saw, I know Mark said, they've been pretty stout in the run defense. I think the last couple of weeks, they have and they haven't. I've seen them get pushed off the line in the same way that the Bills did last week, in that they are maintaining gaps for the most part, but you see them getting pushed off the line of scrimmage and creating some space for running backs to find the hole and make a move. And obviously, we don't have a Dalvin Cook on the Bills roster. I know some people maybe think that Singletary is, but he's not there yet. So it's hard to compare when you're watching these guys. Can Singletary do the same types of things that Cook was able to do last week? I don't know, but I think that the holes are going to open up. When you see Devin Singletary's success, it's been on plays where the holes are wide open and he can just find that. And if he has to make one guy miss, he can do that. That's what he's very good at. So I do see some opportunities, to answer the question, to get the run game going. I know Mark said they've been stout in it, but when I was watching that tape, I said, man, if there's a week to silence Twitter and silence the fans and I don't care who it is, and you know that about me, I don't care if it's Singletary or Gore getting the touches, but getting running backs more involved in this game plan. I think that this is a good week for it. And looking ahead, I'm going to the game, so I'm checking the weather a little bit ahead of time where I would normally in the week. It's looking like it's going to be high 30s, low 40s, again, kind of a rainy, wet, cloudy day. And that also lends itself to that type of game. If you can establish the offensive line, establish the line of scrimmage, and get some of that going, I think that it might be a good game for the Bills running game to get back on track. And we'll see what Dable, if he's listening kind of to the pulse of the league. And I think if you look at the game plan last week, it wasn't his best. And I think some of that was getting away from the run game. So hopefully they correct a little bit of that this week. But I don't know that Gore gets to 100 and tops Barry in this weekend.
Yeah, I don't think that they're terribly different than some of the other teams where they have some talent on the interior defensive line. I don't think it's a team we can just automatically square up and punch in the mouth and push back. I do think we're going to need to be able to pass the ball. We're going to need to be able to threaten some of that secondary, and that I think Landon Collins is a good safety, but he's a better run defender, big play guy than a trusted coverage piece. Josh Norman's not what he used to be, so I do think that that's something we're going to need to see more from John Brown and continuing on his pace that he's shown the whole time. We're then also going to need a little bit more from, maybe finally hitting on something to Robert Foster and getting something going there. Beasley keeping the chains moving, maybe one of the tight ends stepping up. And then, like you said, I do think that they're going to hope to really push with the run game and be able to get something going, but we'll see where that goes. I think that Jonathan Allen and some of the talent they have on the interior defensive line is going to make that tough, but they're going to need to find a way to be productive with it either way. What are you predicting we're going to see this Sunday?
So I think the Bills will win. I think they have to win. Like I said, you can't drop 2 in a row and be a playoff caliber team, and that's where they're trying to get to. So I think this is a must-win game. I know we've said that a few times, but that's the way when you're a mediocre team that's kind of going to be in the hunt. I think the games that you have to win are must-wins. I don't think last week was. I mean, if there was ever a loss that is an okay loss, that none are okay, but that one was probably, as far as this season goes, pretty much okay with me. That's why I'm over it by the Wednesday show here. So I think that the Bills do come out and win. And I'm pretty much right in line with Vegas. I didn't know Vegas was saying that. I'm at 24-13. Bills over the Redskins, 24-13. I think Josh Allen has a really nice game and kind of builds on, without the turnovers, hopefully builds on the game that he's had the last few weeks of just efficient, nothing super fancy, moves the ball, maybe a couple nice long drives, a couple touchdowns, and that's the type of efficiency I want to continue to see. I don't need him to be flashy to win this game.
No, I think you're right. And again, I know a lot of fans are clamoring for the deep ball, for the big blowout 350-yard game and everything there, and that this isn't the time that you need to do that. And don't get me wrong, I'll be ecstatic if they figure out a way to be able to put up some monstrous blowout. But, this is a game where if you don't turn it over and you're playing a rookie quarterback who's not ready, and you simply take care of business and lead some scoring drives, and a few of them, turn into touchdowns, and it may be 6 scoring drives and 2 are touchdowns and 4 field goals, and you're putting up 26 points, and then you hold them to 10. I think that that's a possibility. And that several games here, they've put up, 9 points and things like that with multiple field goals and not being able to punch it in themselves. I think that's the kind of thing that we might see here. So I'm going to predict 26-9, and that we're going to see a fair amount of field goals. I think that it's in that ballpark, the same range that you're looking at, and that total point area there. I don't think we're going to see some crazy, back and forth shooting match. But this is a game the Bills need to win. It's a game that I do think that the film they put up and the kind of humble pie that they had to take watching that breakdown of Philadelphia just punch them in the mouth with the same run play over and over again, and knowing that what they need to do to fix that. I think, unfortunately for the Redskins, they're now going to pay the price for that, in that I think if they caught them at the same time as the Dolphins, if they caught them at the same time as this Eagles game, maybe they would have been able to sneak one in there and be in that position where they're hanging around more than they deserve to be, or where the talent might align. And I'm hopeful that wake-up call is going to avoid that from happening. So I'm going to predict it at 26-9.
Yeah, and I especially want the Bills to win this game in a decisive manner, because I can't stand Rob Ryan. And Rob Ryan is on the other sidelines, and I want the Bills to dominate a defense with Rob Ryan associated to it. So I hope that they come out and punch these guys in the mouth. And just, again, I can't stress enough how it's not the best matchup. It's not going to be the marquee matchup in the NFL this week. It's probably going to be one of the least entertaining games. But as far as Bills fans in this season goes, it's a vastly important game. And like I said, you just can't talk about the playoffs if you drop this game, or even if it's a very close victory. I know we've said, hey, as long as they're getting W's, but if you come out here flat and play a similar game to Miami and let Washington hang in, I'll be happy with a win, but I'll have some really big concerns and really not interested in talking about the playoffs with anybody if they don't come out here and have a really impressive day and just kind of hold this team to where they should be, which is at an arm's length.
Yeah, and I think that's where they need to be, is show us that this is what you expected. Show us that this is where we're supposed to be at, and how we, should be putting together this kind of, snap back, get right game. And then we'll get back to taking things seriously and enjoy what could be a 6-2 record, which would be the first time they've done that in 20 years, and being able to be in that position. And it doesn't make up for what happened last week, but it certainly gets going back the right direction.
Yeah. That's all they need in a season, man. McDermott talked about that. There's great teams have faced adversity. There's a number of years where you have a team that looks like they're down and out, and then they go on a 8-9 game winning streak and run that into the playoffs. So teams face adversity. Like in anything in life, it's how you respond to adversity. And we're going to see what this team's made of. I think this is, we talk about the type of lessons, and it's not just lessons that are on film that come through that you can learn from in film, but it's lessons of who is the makeup of this team, and is it the culture that they've tried to create and that they've told us so much about. And the reason you have a leadership council and you keep guys like Lorenzo Alexander around in this locker room, is that all true? And I think that this is a game, and it's built up now for a couple of weeks, that is a good test of all those things, of the process, of the culture, and all those things. I think we'll see it on Sunday, and I hope that it goes out the way that I think it will.
No, I hope so too. You get to see it in person. Some news for me. I'm going to be watching it from the Delta Sky Lounge at the airport before I take off. So I will be missing my first show in quite a while. I will be handing over to my trusted partner Aaron, who will be riding with you guys for the post game and then the Browns preview next week. And then I'll be back with you guys to do the the game recap from Cleveland afterwards. But I'm going to miss the next 2 shows here while I am traveling abroad. But I know I am leaving it in trusted hands, and that you'll have an even better time with Aaron and not having to tolerate me to get to enjoy him.
It's like in Ferris Bueller when they get the dad's Porsche, you're handing over the keys, and I got to be careful with it. I'm just going to like blow it right through the garage window there, and it's just going to be stuck in a tree somewhere. So hopefully the show will be intact and we don't lose all of our followers by the time you're back. But those Delta Sky Lounges are nice, man, and enjoy it. Take all the little free food that they hand out at those things. Stuff your pockets. Those places are nice.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. I have like a stupid 9-hour flight. I'm heading over the pond to Europe, and not looking forward to that part of it. But I am going to fill my belly before I take off. So
yeah, we did the Sky Lounge or something in Honolulu, and I was kind of like, I don't know if I want to do it. And then we got up there. I was like, this is the way to fly and hang out and wait, man. This is
how this is supposed to work.
You're gonna live like a king for a few hours.
Yeah, no, I'm going to try to make it work. But that's where I'm going to be watching the Bills game. I'll probably have my headphones on and my laptop there all by myself because as you said, this is not going to be the marquee game of the day. But I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to enjoy everything. I might be tweeting to people from the lounge there before I take off, but I leave it in safe hands as we get going. Anything else for the people? Go ahead.
Yeah, in that note, so I will be at the game. So I know people have come to expect us doing the show right around 4:00, right after the game ends. I'm going to be fighting traffic and getting home. So we will send out the link, and I will, if you're the premium member, I'll send it out in the chat. But just know, as far as the premium members go that like to come in and watch the game live, it will be a little bit later, but I'll keep everybody posted on that. And if you're not a premium member, make sure you head over to cover1.net, become a premium member, join the Slack channel, get in this conversation live. The chat was kind of going tonight. It's just fun to be a part of that community that we've built. And outside of that, I know you're going to ask me next. People, you can follow me at Aaron Quinn 716. Really just trying to have fun and interact with people. And I don't hate Devin Singletary. I was just saying that I don't think he's a feature back. So don't follow me and then see that and then unfollow me right away because I don't hate him. I actually really like him a lot.
Yeah, you guys can find me at Greg Thompsett, GregTompsett. I am apparently the official Josh Allen homer because I put together a comparison of his rookie year to this year and got a ton of fun feedback on that. But come and find us.
Improvement's not just linear.
Yeah. Yeah. I just pointed out the fact that, hey, he's not there yet. But if you're trying to say he hasn't shown any progress, he has. Like, he's better. It's not good enough yet. It's not where we need it to be. But saying that he hasn't improved is crazy. But yeah, that's the kind of thing that Aaron and I spend a lot of time doing, the nuance and kind of the gray area of what's out there. And we try to be reasonable, but sometimes we get excited and we say ridiculous things. So you can be entertained that way too. If you're out there listening, give us a like, give us a listen, give us a rating or review. We really appreciate it. Tell a neighbor, tell a friend, let other people know about the show. That's what helps us keep rolling. You can go out there and find some nice Cover One swag. I got my shirt on here tonight. A lot of good things. I do have a Pump the Brake shirt that I'm going to break out when I get back from my trip that is inspired by my man Aaron Quinn here. So we've got a couple more good things coming, but thanks for everything tonight. The chat's been great. Joe, you were awesome tonight. Really appreciate it. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.